The beach of the undead. Ghosts and ghouls, demons and aliens, monsters and worse. Only here on Ghost or What, the best channel for original scary stories. Our next story is The Beach of the Undead. It is not unusual for a perfectly normal place to get a somewhat strange nickname, even for completely unrelated reasons. This meant that nowadays, most people don't bat an eyelash when they talk about the infamous beach of the undead. Most people have no idea whatsoever of the tragic incidents that earned the otherwise peaceful and ordinary beach its horrible nickname. Robert Wheeler wasn't one of those people. He was an extroverted man, the life of the party, the one that always had one story to tell and one prank to pull on his friends. This meant he was always fun to have around, but rarely taken seriously. On the journey toward the beach with his friends, Robert didn't even tell them about the real story behind the ominous nickname. No. He entertained himself by making up all sorts of scary stories that amused and terrified his friends in equal parts. He talked about pirate ships that sank, vicious wars, and some impossible natural disasters. By the time they arrived at the beach, everyone was just about done with Robert's stories. They didn't want to hear anything more about the supposedly haunted beach they were trying to enjoy. None of them, Robert included, could have expected that everything would only go downhill from there and directly toward their worst nightmares. The group was lucky to enjoy most of the day free of any terrors. They were unaware of the human bones hiding deep under the sand. They didn't pay any mind to the unexpected gust of wind that attacked them every now and then, cold as if it came straight from a tomb. None of them noticed the terrible spots of red in the waters, the blood that came out of nowhere and threatened to fill the ocean. If there were undead eyes watching them from deep underwater, the group was completely oblivious to all the red flags and warning signs. At least they were, until it was too late. The group continued to have fun for a while. And whenever one of them needed a short break, a snack, or a drink, they would easily leave the perfect waters, head to the shore, and enjoy the sun and the sand for a while. Eventually, it was Robert who decided to take a small break from all the games and all the fun. He didn't suspect he was also leaving his safety behind. Robert lay down on the hot sand, resting his back against a fallen tree trunk, and he watched fondly as his friends continued with their fun. Once again, an icy breeze hit him, but he let himself believe it was something normal on the beach, except the wind was so strong it rustled up the sand around him, or at least that's what he thought at first. Because a moment later, the wind stopped, but the movements on the sand didn't. He craned his head to observe the sand closer, hoping to maybe see a crab or something similar sneaking through it, but he was wrong. Robert was staring down at a set of footprints. Those were undeniably human footprints on the wet sand, coming from somewhere behind him and going toward the water. It was incredible. It was impossible. He had been standing right there. Nobody had passed by since he arrived. He could even swear that he noticed more footprints appearing before his eyes. Robert immediately worried. He rubbed his face and tried to clear his head. He had to be seeing things, and nobody would believe him anymore anyway. He turned around to grab a drink before returning to the water. But when he was done a few seconds later and turned back to the shore, all the footprints were gone. Good, Robert thought. It had been an illusion. Nothing more. One of his friends, Stuart, was coming to the shore too, taking a seat right where Robert had been. Now Robert started walking toward the water again, and he was almost there when he heard his friend scream. That's when all hell broke loose. Oh my God. Robert, are you okay? Your feet are bleeding, one of the girls said in a high-pitched yell. Immediately, Robert looked down and noticed the deep red blood pooling around his feet. He screamed. He looked behind him at the trail of bloody footprints, and he stumbled down to the sand crying out. His friends rushed toward him to help him, but no matter how much he or they checked, or how much he washed the blood and sand of the soles of his feet, there was no pain and no wounds at all. "Look!" another man yelled. They turned to stare at the bloody footprints Robert had left, but that's when they noticed those weren't his footprints at all. He'd only stepped on them, because they had been going in the opposite direction, filling up with more blood, going directly toward their friend sitting by the tree trunk. When he noticed, he started to scream, "No, no, no." But it was too late. He wasn't able to move away. One of his feet was sucked under the sand, then a hand, and another foot. He was being dragged under by some invisible force. Most of the group rushed to the shore to hold the man being threatened to be buried alive by supernatural forces, but Robert and a couple of his friends had to hang by the edge of the water, because another one of their friends started screaming right beside them. "Help! Help! Something got me!" the man yelled. Robert and his other friend grabbed him tightly and pulled him toward the shore. They had to use all their strength, but they managed to save him. However, none of them could deny the handprint on his legs, as if he had been burned by iron, but it had been someone underwater. They all stared at the unsteady waters, but it had been too long. Nobody still alive could have been hiding there. Finally, when it seemed that all the friends had escaped mortal danger, they fell down to the sand and huddled together tightly on the beach. They watched with utter terror as blood started to seep from the sand underneath them, pooling around their knees, staining everything. Another freezing cold breeze came by, and this time it didn't leave immediately. No, it seemed to go around them in circles, making them shake with fear and cold. They couldn't believe their eyes, but the mark of a red handprint on their friend's legs, it started to appear all over their bodies, as if invisible hands were grabbing from every direction. On their hands and arms, on their stomachs, and even their faces, it was the mark of the devil. They were crying and screaming uncontrollably until, all at once, it seemed to stop. They heard a police siren nearby. They heard the worried calls of people coming over to the beach, and when they looked at each other and the space around them, everything was perfectly fine, without any marks of the horrors they had just survived. Did you think that was the end? The terror never ends. Subscribe to our channel to hear more horror stories, only on Ghost or What.